Oh, well, it's suddenly a Chinooki day, so I had a little bad decision on the dyno here yesterday. I can scarcely believe that that car just works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For how long though?
Oh, well, you know what? It made the right power. I would even call it strong.
14-second pass strong, or?
Yeah, it's a 14-second pass strong. That's
That's
in
better
Calgary. That's a 1450 car.
That's right. It's better than a 16-second pass. So.
If we were down at a low elevation, I guess it would be a
Almost a second faster.
Well, a 14-second car, like a second faster.
Yeah.
The old Exxon Valdez there, the Tecmotion coupe, it went, heck did it go, 999 or something like that in Calgary, like on a Friday night at the Secret Street.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went 944 in Mission. So that was like 6/10 quicker on a 9-second car.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking to myself, like, is that what percentage less would that be then? Because it was 999, so basically 10 seconds, and then you picked up 6/10.
Yeah.
So that's like 6% difference.
Yeah, something like that.
So is that about how much horsepower you would lose from altitude change?
Yeah, you could calculate it for sure. I mean, you're about 2 psi lower here than you are down there. So there's a guy who just sold his restored 93 Calypso convertible. A guy from Kingston picked it up here in Albany. Wow. Yeah, with the kind of dollar we got, I don't know how he can afford to buy an American car.
Yeah, he must be retired, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm sorry to be just sitting here having a living room conversation with you guys. We're kind of waiting for 6 o'clock to start the official thing, but somehow or other we got to get mic'd up and sat down and whatever. If you're wondering what all the boxes are, this is like 10 grand worth of parts I picked up today for my Godzilla project. So it doesn't seem like enough boxes, does it?
I thought it was LSA parts when I first walked in, but
well, these Holly fuel rails say they're for LS, but it's the same stuff for Godzilla.
Yeah.
So
the Ford LS, as the Chevy guys like to call it.
yeah, we're prime time on the East Coast, 8 o'clock on the East Coast.
There we go.
Yeah. 5 o'clock if your house is burning down in Pacific Palisades. I hope not. Geez, I hope none of you guys are out there. Yeah. And if you are, I hope you're safe. Oh, there's somebody who likes my vent gauge pod. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. You know what? I mean, I make these plastic parts, and I wouldn't sell them if I wouldn't use them in my own car. We spent quite a lot of time on like the Fox body vent gauges, for instance, just making sure everything fit and every gauge would fit. And you cannot believe how much time I spent trying to color match stuff. And finally, I finally had to give up. The black that I have is a good match, but every other color, there is just no filament that's the right color. And so I do some of them in smoke gray, which I have to finish myself with the LMR interior paint, and that's a match because it's, you know, the correct stuff. And on top of it all, like sometimes the interior's faded, right? I've even seen them, I don't know if you have, where the color of the vent doesn't actually match the rest of the dash on the factory car. So
yeah, and I mean, my Fox has the blue interior. So it's got like multiple shades of blue, and it's like the vent is like dark, the ring is like almost white, and then the dash is like the same color as my door panel, more or less. But I went out and bought blue paint and black paint. I was thinking about redoing the colors in it a little bit. So I'm kind of on the fence if I want to do the blue or not again. Then I can't do as many different options on the exterior if I do that. You know, I probably wouldn't want to have a blue interior with a Sonic blue exterior. People will think I'm part of the Crips or something like that. So
There's a guy in Sacramento. He's 350 miles from the fires, but holy smokes, it looks bad down there.
yeah.
I mean, we know a little bit about fires here in Alberta. They just about burned all of Fort McMurray down here a few years ago. Anyway, it's 6 o'clock, so let's try and officially start the stream. Thanks for coming. Really, one of the things we're celebrating here tonight is the Tecmotion channel. Almost unbelievably, has been online for 15 years. Boy, an ad showed up on my feed. I don't know if ad showed up for you guys. The Tecmotion channel's been online for 15 years. I can scarcely believe it. And I bet you I'm one of the oldest currently active automotive channels, or channels period, on YouTube. Most of the stuff that's that old is, you know, dusty. So anyway, it seems like kind of a great milestone, so I thought I would con Cam into coming down here and give you guys a live. We can interact with you, talk about your our winter projects, talk about your winter projects, and answer your questions. For those of you who don't know Cam, he goes by Fox Body Cam on Instagram. You can follow him on there. He looks like a young guy, but let me tell you something. Cam has one of the wildest Fox builds out there. It's a Stroker Cleveland. Is it 410 or 408?
With the like 40 over that it has the bore, it's 410 cubic inches, technically. Yep.
Right. So I mean, this is a wild little car. It's an every nut and bolt car. A lot of road race suspension in the car, and it's a little bit unassuming. You know, it's not the prettiest car out there, but it's a take your money on Friday night if you were into that kind of thing type of a car for sure. Awesome car, and Cam is from a family who. The rumor, at least, is that they're such hardcore Ford guys that the kids weren't allowed to watch Smokey and the Bandit because of too much GM content.
Yeah, that or Teletubbies. I wasn't allowed to watch those.
You've seen Smokey and the Bandit, haven't you?
Oh yeah, of course. We've watched Dukes of Hazzard. That's allowed. That's okay.
Yeah.
My dad just didn't want me to grow a big black mustache when I grew up, I think.
You ever watch Starsky and Hutch? So I have a drinking game for you guys. You watch Starsky and Hutch, and then every time they violate somebody's constitutional rights, you take a drink.
Yeah, you'll be hammered in the first 20 minutes.
Any of those old cop shows are like that. Rockford, whatever. Anyway, so that's Cam. He's not just a hardcore Fox Body guy, but he's from a hardcore Ford family, and you guys have a pretty wild little winter project underway. Do you want to give a sort of brief outline of what that is?
Sure. So my uncle and my dad, back in the 80s or something like that, they had this 66 Fairlane 500 that my uncle bought. It had a 289 in it from the get-go, and they ripped that out and put the Cleveland in it that is actually in my Fox Body now. So that was just a Boss 351 out of a 72 Pantera, and it had like an intake cam, carburetor set up on it, and it probably made like 500 horsepower, but basically nothing below 3,600 RPM because of the oversized heads on the thing. And so anyways, that car yanked the Cleveland out of that, I guess over 10 years ago now, when that got built and put into my Fox Body. And the Fairlane just kind of sat. We looked at it and thought the floorboards were bad and stuff, and so we ended up ordering the floorboards and just kind of stockpiling some parts just in case to, you know, make sure we still had access to stuff. You know, maybe someday somebody stops making the bumpers for it or something. You know, we got a rear bumper for it. And I started taking the floor pans out, and it's like, maybe that much rust on each side. So I was like, well, we could have, the motor was very healthy. We could have put a set of plugs in it, a carburetor distributor cap, and went and had fun. But you try not to think about, the money that you spent that you didn't have to. So anyways, we were trying to think of something to do with that Fairlane, and I tossed around the idea of, let's just put the Cleveland back in that car, and then maybe I can do a Coyote in my Fox or something. And then my dad decided for himself to get a Gen 3 Illuminator 12.5-to-1 Coyote, and he was trying to think of something to put it in. So I think same thing, he wanted to get that before it became unavailable. You only live once, spend your money, enjoy it. So I talked him into putting it in the Fairlane, which we can achieve if I put a 79 to 04 Mustang style front suspension in. So AJE sells a front suspension kit called a Colt 45, and then you can use Fox body or 95 to 04 spindles and rack and pinion conversion on it. So that's the main issue with a classic Ford, or at least the Fairlane specifically. It has a very large steering box right behind the shock tower. So that's right where, if you were to trim the shock tower to fit your Coyote, well, then you still have a steering box stuck in the way. So that Colt 45 kit, it's pretty affordable for us because we have...
Well, you're going to go rack, right? Rack and pinion?
Yep. Like my Fox has like an 04 Cobra rack and pinion on it, and I'm going to upgrade that on the Fox and move the 04 Cobra rack onto the Fairlane. We've got some Bear PBR like 04 Cobra style brakes that can go on the front spindles. And then I guess the meat and potatoes of the thing is we've got a 3-liter Whipple on the way for it, and we're gonna do that, and we're gonna try and see if we can run it on 93 and just do a safe tune for that. But it basically, we're ready to go for like C16 or E85, and on your dyno, probably at least 700 at the tire is the goal. So
well, you'll have a tough time with C16 with a Coyote because you need to use wideband all the time closed loop fuel control.
Yep.
And that will eat that sensor up or eat those sensors up right away.
We'll probably end up keeping it like 13 PSI off of the blower, and then we might do like a boosting type situation on it. But
well, or you could run like Motorsport 109.
Yeah,
that's okay
like
for
that.
Sensors, but
something like that probably. But rather than E85, I've been talking to some guys around here that get E85 and store it in a tank that they seal in their garage, so it kind of keeps a little bit longer and stuff like that. So I was talking to some guys about that. We'll see. I might try it, but
a lot of our guys are in the U.S. and E85 is more available there. But here, I think there is 1 or 2 places you can buy it at a pump in Calgary. One
good place that I was recommended, at least.
Yeah, but it's not the kind of thing where you can build an E85 car and say drive it up the road and be sure you can buy fuel.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the thing is my Fox with its 408 Cleveland, like it's high compression. It takes a race gas additive for like a 95 or 98 octane, like mix fuel in it, and it rattles your fillings out when you drive it long distances. It's a nasty build. So something like a Coyote, if you can run 9s in a Coyote that you can cruise through the mountains, that's the idea. So who knows, maybe I would put like a flex fuel tune on it or something if I could. Something to think about at least.
Well, that's a pretty cool project. I guess I'll give a little overview on my project. I got old Bad Decision sitting behind me here. If any of you guys have been following along on this, that car I bought as just a roller with a plethora of parts, and I mean the it's like a lot of these projects, right? The whole interior of the car was full of junk, kind of stuff that takes a day just to pull out and sort through. There was boxes and boxes of stuff. It arrived in a couple of installments here on the floor, and it, wiring harness chopped, fuel system chopped, last registered in British Columbia, which, I mean, that requires an out-of-province inspection, which means you got to get the car really up to like factory type standards in order to get a license plate on it. So phase one of that project was, call it a restoration, and just putting that car back together. And yeah, it probably needed a guy like me to rescue the car. It was so so chopped up, and the kind of thing where all the fasteners are just in like 13 separate cans of fasteners that have, they're not even like, it's not like there's a can of interior and a can of, under the hood or whatever. It's
The mix.
just a random menagerie of junk. So anyway,
Sounds like your typical Fox body.
eh,
Just a bunch of buckets of bolts.
yeah, well, when I take something apart, I Ziploc everything and I label the Ziplocs. And then when you go to put it back together again, even if it's 2 years down the road or it's a different guy putting it together, there's some chance that they can figure out, what fasteners go where. But this wasn't that kind of a car. So anyway, I did most of the work last winter. It's got to the stage where it could be moved around under its own power. It wasn't ready for an inspection, and of course in the summer it's busy here, so it got shoved in the corner. In the fall this year, I've been through it and cleaned everything up, and new windshield, got all the electrical working, all the lights working, windshield washer, wipers, all that stuff. Basically all the gauges work except the oil pressure gauge, which doesn't matter for the out of province. And I got a license plate just before Christmas, I think the Friday before Christmas. So that was a big milestone. The car is put together as a stalker, and some of you may have noticed, but I have a Godzilla that I bought a year or so ago sitting on a stand here, and that's going to be the engine that we're going to put in this car. So going forward here over the rest of the winter, we're going to work on that Godzilla project, yank this engine transmission out, and see what it takes to put a Godzilla in. Now, I will say, I think it's kind of funny for me to be on this channel like building stalkers, because that's not really my thing.
That's what you used to do to stalkers.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't even look at them at car shows. And, I think guys who know me know that I'm a pretty hardcore modifier, and pretty serious modifier. Yeah, I got a whole shop full of stuff. I have a Coyote street rod that's just off camera here, which I've 2,500 hours in. And I was one of the first guys to have a working aftermarket Coyote project. So anyway, we're going to move on to some real hot rodding stuff. When it comes to this Godzilla swap, boy, there's a lot of stuff you got to figure out as you go along. It may seem like there's a bunch of parts for it, and there are some commercial parts, enough to make, I think the project likely to succeed. But even putting the engine in the car, I thought I'm going to use this Team Z K member, Team Z K member, but it doesn't even support power steering. You can't put a rack on if you use that K member. So you've got to kind of make it up yourself.
It's got to be a manual only rack it'll work with?
Manual
or-
rack, yep. Yep, you can.
Is
There's
that
no,
because of the Godzilla oil pan then, or?
no. You got to change that anyway. In fact, that's what's in this box is the whole Holly accessory kit: oil pan, oil pump, accessory drive, all of that stuff. That's that's what's in this big box. You got to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the pan hangs too low and it's
Yeah.
going to drag on the ground when you stick it in the Mustang. But we're going to have to use one of these sort of do-it-yourself motor mount kits where you weld tabs onto the chassis, and I'm guessing that there's no way to make the stock K-member work with the header clearance. This big box has got a set of long tube headers for the car in it. So we're probably going to have to adapt a tubular K-member to work. All of this is figure it out as you go along kind of stuff, some real hot rodding stuff. So there'll be lots to see if you're interested in a project like that. So one thing that I did want to bring up, I guess, is I don't know, Cam, I get approached all the time by guys who want me to shill their products on the channel, right? They're going to give me like an affiliate link, and they're going to give me free parts, and most of the time these kind of things are these are a terrible fit. I think my favorite is the guys who wrote to me and said they loved my sense of they loved my sense of style and fashion, and would I wear their sunglasses? Have you seen this channel? I'm a balding middle-aged guy
From
with a
Alberta, you should
greasy
be
jean
wearing
jacket.
pit vipers.
Anyway, one outfit that did approach me that I finally agreed to take an affiliate link for is Evil Energy. I will say I have yet to use much of their stuff. I looked through my whole history of parts stuff, and I think the only thing I've used that's theirs is oxygen sensor bungs, and they do make a real nice oxygen sensor bung, the kind that's got a shoulder on it, so you use a hole saw or a step drill to drill out a hole in the pipe, then you stick that in and the shoulder goes into the hole, and then you weld around the outside. It's a way better way to do it. You don't get leaks, but you can weld it all. You don't get leaks, and you don't get slag inside the threaded area, because if you put a wideband in, which is the usual reason you're putting a bung on, the sensor head is almost as big as the hole, so you can't have slag in there. That was a good part. Used the Evil Energy part for that. But Cam, it turns out, has used some of their fittings. I think their sort of main thing is fuel system parts, right? Fittings. They make pumps. I don't know what to tell you about pumps, but I've used a lot of sort of cheap fittings, Performance World, Red Horse over the years. And they've been fine. I built lots of projects with them, and in fact, Bad Decision has a whole bunch of Performance World and Red Horse fittings in the fuel system now. But you tell me, you've used some of these Evil Energy components on your own before any deal I made with them.
Yeah, I mean,
are they all right?
Is I just went out to the store to go get some of the run-of-the-mill Performance World stuff to add a power steering cooler to my Fox because it didn't have one at the time, and I needed like a specific fitting. I think I wanted like a 180 degree with a wide radius, and they only had ones that like hooked so close it was almost touching. So I think I ended up getting something different, like a 130 degree or something like that. But anyways, that's what got me looking, and I went, what the hell, I'll try them out and see how they hook up to the hose. And worst case scenario, it's just the low pressure return on my power steering for this one. And yeah, it seemed to work out well. So my dad has another car that I put a catch can setup on it. Same thing. I just went, you know what? This is easier than going to the parts store and trying to list off to the parts guy because they have all the fitting wall locked off now. So you can't, pick through them and
yeah.
look at them. You
These,
have to.
these fittings, like if you guys have never done AN fittings, these fittings 20, 30, some like a 180 like that could
Yeah.
be 40 or 50 bucks. So
Yeah, and then
especially if you buy like Aeroquip or something like that.
yeah, and I mean for me, like in work, I work with like intricate tubing systems for natural gas stuff. So I'm pretty well versed in all the different fittings, but it felt just like work making a bill of materials, this long just to remember all the fittings, and then you always forget one, and you're paying premium price for what I've found to be the same thing as the Evil Energy stuff. It's you look
Now-
at it and you go, this could be made in the same place.
You've used like Performance World, that kind of stuff as well, right? And have you used any of this Evil Energy stuff in something critical like a fuel system where there's pressure?
Not yet on the fuel system. I have used them in my oil cooler system. So that's on the high pressure side of my oil system.
We could have 60 PSI in there, right?
80.
80, okay.
I have a high flow pump on my car, so that it leaks out of the NPT, elbows that I have clocked. But on the hoses that I have, they're expensive, high temperature hoses, and they're probably just worn out at this point. But,
So I'm sorry, the fittings leak?
not the Evil Energy stuff. My expensive stuff that is in like the pipe thread fittings and stuff, like stainless steel fittings. So that stuff leaks. But I have like a standalone thermostat that's off the side. It's not built into the oil filter relocation like some guys have.
Right.
So I had to get a couple that it's like -10 to -10 stubby unions and things like that. So
That's a thermostat for the oil cooler,
That's right.
So you don't run the cooler when it's cold.
correct. Yeah, it's bypasses until it reaches temperature, and then it closes the bypass.
okay.
So in there's some oil system stuff that's hot oil, super hot oil. So
Okay, well, listen, it's always with some trepidation that I even suggest that you use parts that I haven't tried myself. These parts look like they're the same deal as any of these other cheap fittings, which, by the way, are all made in China anyway. I've used the cheap fittings like Performance World and Red Horse a lot, and they've been great. I looked pretty carefully at this Evil Energy stuff, and I don't think there's much difference by the look of
real
things.
anodizing, and it's not like it's the cheap aluminum or anything like that. It seems like the same grade of stuff. Really.
Anyway, if you think you might want to use this stuff, you get 10% off if you put in code Tecmotion 10. That's capital T, TECMOTION 10. It's not really an endorsement, but when you're buying cheap fittings, if they're 10% cheaper, that's all the better.
Yeah, I mean, I would check out their catalog. There's kind of good specialty things. Like I got hose organizer things and stuff. You can use that. If you put a longer, M6 bolt in it, you can use it as a mount straight into a riv nut.
Yeah, those are like aluminum clips that'll clip over, like to tie your two
Yep,
your
two
return
hoses
and your
and then they
and your
clamshell
feed
onto
together,
it,
right?
and you can have your plumbing, nicely organized and mounted into an area. Or
Okay. Well, I don't want to spend this shilling for this stuff. I wanted to actually chat with you about it though, because like I said, I haven't used them very much, and it's hard for me to, give an endorsement. But
they got that same thing as the regular AN fittings, where you can take a socket and they've got reverse threads to run, the initial collar onto them and stuff. Same thing.
yeah, they make push lock style too. They got about three different styles. Anyway, if you want to use that stuff, Tecmotion 10 will get you another 10% off, which is always helpful. We got a question here from a guy asking about electric power steering on on these cars. I have seen the odd car like that. I think they use like a Prius.
Rack.
Yeah, and I think a Prius motor or whatever. Have you ever worked with one?
No, I was gonna do a Volvo pump on my project.
I know one that I had in here. Like, I think it works. I did have one Fox body in here with this kind of a setup, and I'm sure it was the Prius setup that he had in here. And he had electrical problems on the car. He didn't have a big enough alternator. And then there was some discussion, like he had other problems where there was, I had a sniper on the car and he was getting some funny fluctuations. And
Every time you turn the wheel.
yeah, right. And of course, it's causing the car to drop into open loop and like screw around kind of stuff, fluctuating his throttle position. And so he had a few electrical problems. And then he starts in on me about, oh, what does a Prius have that this car doesn't have? A huge battery. That's what a Prius has. So can it work? Yes. I think it takes about 60 amps.
It's a fair bit.
It's a lot. You better have a good alternator. And I'm not sure about what it's actually heavier than a traditional pump.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I'm kind of surprised that you can't just get away with offset rack bushings and like a K-member spacer setup or something like that. I would think you'd be able to steal 2 inches.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, like my street rod over here that you can't see, it's got manual steering. And I mean, it's a car that have run on the road course. I ran a full season of Time Attack with it. I was second in the GT1 class of the Alberta Time Attack series with it. It seemed, and I'm a big brute of a guy, so manual steering isn't all that bad. I seriously thought about one of the electric kits for that. But at the time, at least, the electric kits that you could put on the street rods were kind of like those old like 70s F100 power steering. You ever seen that? Where like you could use your pinky finger and dry steer it. And so you'll lose your you'll lose all your road feel if you have a steering system like that in it. I think there's a lot of good options for hydraulic or hydro boost. Well, that's for brakes, but hydraulic power steering. It's kind of the way Fox bodies were designed to be set up. And I could tell you a bad decision here. My game plan is to put hydraulic power steering with a traditional pump on it. And I'm going to go to the trouble of doing a custom motor mount setup in order to allow me to put power steering on. Because at the end of the day, I think we weighed that engine, weighed it on the channel. There's a short, I think, that shows how much it weighs. It seems to me just the engine was like 630 pounds. So, the car's going to be a little heavy on the nose, and you're going to be, especially driving on the street, you're going to be happy you got power steering, I think, even if you're a big brute of a guy like me. And then whatever, if you were to
put the school bus wheel in it.
get a wheel out of a 1968 Freightliner or something, eh?
You could get the knob on it.
Yeah, for sure. Here's a guy that says the sniper's susceptible to RF interference.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they are. There are some settings in there that can sort of raise the noise floor a little bit to keep it from doing stuff like dropping into open loop, which is a thing that happens with it.
And increase the signal strengths that it's using or something like that?
Well, what it does is you can actually set sort of a noise floor where the noise
filter
spikes,
below here.
the noise spikes or the changes have to be a certain magnitude in order to be recognized.
Right.
And that can really help. There are some settings like that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you the other thing is I fix these systems for guys all the time. But there's a guy on here right now that had a sniper setup that I did some fixing with. If you run that any of the control wiring on the sniper close to noisy components like CD ignition box, coil, the primary ignition wires like the spark plug wires or coil wires, distributor, any of that kind of stuff.
Alternator grounds and cables.
Yep, you are begging for problems. And like this one car that I'm thinking about, they couldn't even set the timing on it. And when I went out and I logged it, I'm watching the logs, you get like 100 samples per second log. Yeah, well, what had happened is it's like 100 samples per second, right? So it's really fast. So you got to blow the log up so you can see what's going on. So sample 1 says 800 RPM on the RPM feed, and sample 2 says 8,000 RPM because it took an ignition spike on there, right? And so then it reads that as like a rapid acceleration, and that causes it to drop into open loop. And like I said, this was so bad that we couldn't even set the timing. And when you set that up, the difference or the strength of the magnetic field is around a wire is proportionate to the square of the distance. It's inversely proportionate to the square of the distance. So something that touches and something that's like that far apart, whatever that is, like 3 inches or something, is a world of difference. So when you lay that wiring out in the car, keep that control wiring away from all this other stuff. And if it's got to cross over something like an alternator main power cable, do it at a right angle.
Maybe insulate it too.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can shield it and all of this stuff, but you know, if it's just this far away, that's totally different than like touching. And especially GM stuff, guys always have the distributors at the back. They have the CD ignition on the firewall, and then you're trying to make the car look neat. So you have all that wiring is all like bundled together there and run along, and it causes all kinds of trouble. So if you're trying to get a sniper to work right, that's.
I've heard of guys having them start running weird the moment they put the hood down.
Really?
With a steel hood, yeah.
Yeah, well, on the Ford, with the distributor in the front, the PCM part of the sniper is actually at the front of the throttle body, and so it's not very far away from
arcing across the hood to the PCM.
I don't know if it arcs, but it's not very far away from the distributor. And then if you have your wires laid out so that the wires are kind of carelessly looped back and touch the front of the sniper, that can be problems. Or if they are touching or very close to the throttle position sensor, that can be a problem, because if it gets a throttle spike, then it'll drop into open loop. So
Lots of gotchas.
a lot of times, you get a car in here that's a problem, a sniper problem, and I'll look at the wiring and go, well, let's start with the stuff we can see is wrong, and you move wiring 4 inches, and a lot of the problems disappear. So this guy says he's already got a manual. Oh, that's Todd from Yorkton. I think he's given a. He's talking about the Volvo pump. That's another thing that guys use. Austin has that Volvo pump set up.
Yeah, they're easy to get. I heard that the same fitting that comes out the back of your Ford power steering pump plugs right into the Volvo pump. It's stamped Ford on the Volvo pump.
Yeah, so that's still a hydraulic power steering.
You can get a controller
it's
for
just
them
that
now,
it's just that it's an electric pump.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that system, I think, works okay.
Yeah, I think it works really good, and I mean, you have the freedom to stick that pump where you want, and one less thing on the front of the motor to worry about.
Yeah, I'd say the top reason to either go manual or to go with something like the Volvo pump or whatever is if there's just not enough room for all your accessories on the front of the car.
Horsepower gains.
Mm,
You get
know
like 4
what?
horsepower from that. What do you mean?
Wow. I mean, it takes electric power. That's got to come from somewhere. So
Yeah.
it loads the
There
alternator
we
up.
go. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think you actually get a lot because it still requires power to
What about
operate.
like an electric water pump? Just
You
for
know, okay, so I have an
conversation's sake.
electric water pump on my 90 coupe, and the main reason for that is because of the accessory drive on the front of the car. It uses a drive mandrel, and it's got a external oil pump, which is run with a cog belt off a pulley on that drive mandrel. And there's just only so much room for stuff that can be run with belts off of it. So it has an electric water pump. And one thing that is nice on a drag car about an electric water pump is in the pits, you can circulate the coolant to try and get the car cooled down
Yep.
without having to have it running.
You can also change the pump without breaking any gaskets if it fails on you. So, mechanical pump, you're dumping fluid on the ground, and the electric pump, it's
Wow.
seals with O-rings
It's
on the
O-rings.
body.
Yeah, it's
so
O-rings.
you don't have to peel silicone off it and wait for silicone to dry and stuff like
No,
that.
you don't have to do that, but I think you got to reduce the coolant level in the system,
Yep.
or you're going to end up, like when you take that
Oh, yeah.
off, coolant will gush out if you just took
Yeah,
it
yeah.
off.
Yeah. I've seen ones where you can change just the motor off of them.
Oh, I think the setup that I have, so it has a Danny B belt drive, and it's got a Mazier pump. And I know there was some gotchas on matching up that cover, but I talked to Mike Mazier, but I mean, it's getting to be a lot of years ago, but I talked to Mike Mazier, and they were able to sort it all out and send me parts that fixed. Like, it wasn't a problematic part to put on. It's just that you have to have the right adapters or whatever the heck it is in order to get it to fit. So I don't think you should run an electric water pump on the street. The flow rate on that pump is actually lower than the flow rate on a like a stock belt driven pump. It was like 35 gallons an hour or something like
Yeah.
that. And so like when you run it on the street, if you're getting the car hot day, I mean, Canada isn't as bad; it's not as hot, but you'll end up with you can end up with some cooling problems, and for no real gain. Like, there's no real reason to do it.
I saw something interesting the other day. I'm part of like lots of Cleveland groups and stuff, and some Cleveland guys will have cooling issues, like light to late traffic and stuff like that. And what one guy did to solve his cooling issue is he put a inline electric pump on the outlet of his radiator, so it pulls more flow at idle, or you could flip it on in the pits or whatever. And then he said that as soon as his RPM comes up, that his mechanical pump just pushes past it.
Huh. There's a guy asking about 88 convertible motor mounts. You know, let me tell you what I do when it comes to motor mounts. I call up my friends at Western Motorsports and I say, sell me some motor mounts at work. And
Get some Derlin ones or something like that.
no, like you can buy, those guys will sell you like stock type mounts.
can get rubber
Who
ones,
exactly
yeah.
makes them? I don't know. There's so many other things you have to concern yourself with on these projects that, you call experienced Ford Performance Parts place like that,
Yeah.
and they'll sell you something that's the right part that's going to work. Yeah, I know there are some kind of crappy motor mounts out there. I'm not sure I would buy them from Rock Auto. Now, don't get me wrong. I buy service parts from Rock Auto, but
Better than the Napa stuff a lot of the time.
yeah, but and whatever, it's fast and cheap, and they
Yep.
ship up here. It's all good.
It
but
exists.
sometimes I gotta say, sometimes like even just buying like pigtails, like wiring pigtails, I can order quantity one from Rock Auto in the U.S. and by the time it arrives here and whatever, all of the duties and taxes and customs charges and whatever have all been paid. A lot of times for just quantity one, it'll cost less than ordering it through my like in-house parts supply guys, because this is a shop, right? So I have in-house parts supply. You just go on and go tap, 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 and they're supposed to show up in an hour, and they deliver it in an hour. Half the time for pigtails, for stuff like Fox bodies, they don't have it anyway. And if they did, it's 40% more than if I ordered it from Rock Auto, and usually I get it from those guys in, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. So
yeah, I mean, when I worked at Ford, and if they didn't have a part in existence anymore, they would order it off of Rock Auto, and I don't think they told the customer, you know, just so you know, we're putting some Rock Auto parts on your car.
I have heard tell that a bunch of dealerships are bypassing their own parts chain and buying stuff like filters and whatnot from Rock Auto because it costs less. And
Make
I'll
more
tell
money
you,
off 'em.
like I have a Chevy Corvette and C8 Corvette, and that thing has a dual clutch transmission, and the dual clutch transmission has a filter, and the filter has to be changed every so often, and you have to take this panel off with 30 fasteners and all of this stuff to get at it to do it. Well, anyway, I think my parts source here, which is a Delco parts source, like their sort of main line is Delco. I think they were $189 my cost for that filter, and they didn't have it anyway. And then so I go on Rock Auto, and it was $143 or $146 or something delivered, and they had it, and so that's what I put on. But I hear that some of these like dealerships are actually bypassing their in-house parts chain for consumable stuff like that. And you know, it was the real thing. Shows up, it's a Delco part. It has when you get that filter, it comes with 4 little fasteners, and there's a bunch of O-rings, and you know, it wasn't some like Chinese knockoff. It's the real thing. So here's a guy who asked if we run AC on our cars up here. Well, yeah, you got the 2 and 60, 2 windows down and 60 miles an hour. Nah, look, a lot of these Canadian cars are shipped with AC. Practically every new car has AC. This 11 GT I got back here, that's an AC car. But I think it was, especially in the Fox body days, more common to end up with cars that were non-AC right from the factory. Bad decision was an AC car. It isn't anymore, but it was. My 90 Coupe was a non-AC car right from the factory, and it was a weird car. It had it was a coupe. It had the true LX interior with the LX seats, not the GT seats. It had power windows and power locks. It wasn't a crank window car. It had premium sound, but it had no AC.
Factory ordered.
Yeah, it was somebody custom ordered the car. So, and you know, I bet you there's a higher percentage of non-AC cars.
Yeah, I mean,
in
for
Canada.
my Fox, if this tells you anything, I bought an expensive pulley system with an AC compressor. I got a condenser set up for it. I have the HVAC setup that I pulled out of a wrecker to put AC in it. It happened to have AC, so I guess I got lucky with that. But I haven't been bothered to connect the dots. You know, in the 10 years, there's been other things with the car that are more you know, important to, you know, driving it hard and beating the crap out of it. So we definitely don't live in Texas. You know, if I lived in Texas, I wouldn't make it, you know, down the street without sweating my way through my jeans and my shirt, right? So
I mean, there are some hot days here. I think your sort of hottest days you see in Calgary are in the
We got
low
around like
90s Fahrenheit,
yeah,
something
maybe
like
mid
that.
90s and the hottest days.
There's the occasional day here where I've seen like shop temperatures be over 100. A more typical like July summer day is 82, right? Like Hawaii.
Yeah.
And then today, I mean, today it's middle of January, it's the beginning of January. I think it was like 35 degrees or something today. It was something like that yesterday in the daytime.
The coldest part of the year.
Yeah, right now it says it's 25. It's 6:45 p.m. It's blacker than a cow's gut out there right now. It's so dark. It's among the darkest days of the year or whatever.
The sun goes down at 4:30.
But it can be, 30 below Fahrenheit, 40 below Fahrenheit. There aren't a lot of 40 below days in Calgary. The further north you go, like if any of you guys watch Zip Ties and Bias Plies, I don't know if you watch that guy. That's what my dad calls one of them up north boys. And he lives up north there somewhere. I got some cousins up there. And yeah, it gets pretty cold up there. 40 below is not uncommon.
Yeah,
it's not every day, but it's
you
not
can watch the
uncommon.
air stop moving in front of you.
I went to university in Edmonton. I always figured minus 20 Celsius was a heat wave in the winter up there.
It's t-shirt weather.
Pretty well every production car these days has air conditioner, and I think most of us are not driving these Fox bodies as our, everyday, all the time car, so you put up with a little bit more.
I go to work before the sun comes up anyway.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. You think it's funny building a all black interior, no heater box,
Black leather seats?
Yeah, Fox body, like my coupe.
Yeah.
And then you're sitting in a staging lane, and someone oils the track down, and you got a car with a window net and a Hans device and a harness. So now you're all strapped in the car, and you're wearing a 3-layer fire suit, and you can't get out because
The headers are heating up the floorboards.
well, you got to shut off, but like if you get out, it takes 5 minutes or something to get yourself situated back in the car.
Yeah.
Removable wheel, cage you got to climb over and all this stuff. So what do? You end up sitting in there. Well, it's not so funny sitting in an all black interior, no heater box car. That's why I left power windows on the car, because at least I could roll the windows down.
I might just bring a can of compressed air and point it upside down, sauce myself with the thing.
Oh, there's guys when they race like this, they got crew with them all the way to the line, and they're fanning them with the door or whatever. My wife came out a lot. She's a very good drag race videographer. She'd be in the stands set up with the cameras. So if I was stopped and oiled down in the staging lanes, yeah, you're on your own.
Yeah, I like seeing some of the like guys in drag week and like drag and drive events and some of their DIY AC setups. Like one guy, I forget who it was. I want to say it's like a Finnegan or someone like that. He had a cooler full of ice with ducting routed through it and straight to his crotch. Blowing ice air up his pants while he was driving. So,
well, the road race guys use. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. And
cool suits.
I've worked with lots of like Fox body road race guys, and if they're especially in endurance and they're running in the summertime, well, I mean, that's when you run, but summer, sometimes they run further south, right? Guys run into the U.S. They have cool shirts, which are like a shirt that you wear that's got water passages in it, and then instead of a passenger seat, they'll usually have a cooler there that's full of ice water and a pump.
Like a fish tank pump or something?
Yeah, that's right. And it's, bigger than that, but more like an intercooler pump.
Right.
Right? And then it circulates that ice water through their shirt, which is under their fire suit to help cool them off. So, I mean, that's a solution if you're instead of having to have AC. Plus, track guys don't like AC because it drips. right? So now it drips water on the
Yeah,
track.
that's true.
Like if you're in the staging lanes, turn your AC off, because what'll happen is you'll get up to the start line and it'll be dripping water, and they'll be like, out
you
of here.
later.
Yeah, get out, push you back or whatever. So, somebody asked about Scott at Cold War Motors. Do you ever watch that channel?
Sounds familiar.
Those guys are up at Ardrossan, I think, and that's like 200 miles north of here. So that's still in the what you might call civilized part of Alberta. Alberta's a huge place. It's twice as big as Germany, and you can drive from the southern border. You can drive all day north and still be in Alberta.
Yeah, about I would say 80% of the province lives in the bottom third.
Right, and once you get up sort of north West Lock there's a whole part of the province in the center which has probably hardly ever seen a human. And then on the west side you go up Peace River and
We were talking about that at work today. They're saying near like Lesser Slave Lake in there, they're like it's all so bare, and they're releasing wild boars out there for the wolves to eat and stuff. That's what they're talking about at work today.
I think I saw that there's somebody found like the biggest beaver dam in the world, and I think it's all in that mess in sort of north central Alberta
Yeah,
there.
see,
Yeah.
that's what the earth should be like without humans, overrun by beavers. See, they would take it over. They would dam it up, develop it.
Well, there's some real engineers. So
There you go.
anyway, there's lots of stuff you can get to going up on the west side of the province. You can drive all the way into the Northwest Territories, and now you can drive all the way to the Arctic Ocean. And on the east side of the province, you drive up there, you get up to like Fort McMurray and where all the oil sands are. Where, whatever, there's Alberta is something like the second or third largest reserves of oil in the world, and there's lots of conventional, but there's lots in the oil sands up there.
It's just hard to extract.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I don't know. What should we talk any more about this Godzilla project, or do you want to talk a little more about your Coyote project?
Ooh, I don't want to give it away too many racing secrets. I guess the biggest debate with that build right now is, if you've got a Gen 3 Coyote and you want to run a 6R80, you have to run like a quick 6 shift kit. And I've been looking around, and some guys are not recommending that for the high power builds and stuff. They said the control wasn't adequate, that guys were hurting transmissions.
With the quick 6?
Apparently. So I was going to look into that a little more. Then, the next thing is there is outfits out there where you can buy a full 10R80, not send them a core, but they actually provide the core and the built transmission. But 10R80, you're unable to adjust the spring pressure of the clutches when in the programming. So I mean, it's kind of has some bugs, I guess, if you want to explain it that way. How you run that transmission might have a big impact on how happy you are with it. But
the 10, or I had a long chat with your dad about this the other day. The 10 or 80, I think, is a great transmission. Like I have one in my truck, but as a hot rodder transmission, I'm not sure that it's well enough understood or well enough decoded to really be fantastic. I know there's a couple outfits out there that seem to think they got it figured out, but
I mean, my thought process was, if it's just programming, then that's something that we can work on over time and try and find the sweet spot. And maybe we got a street tune and a race tune, and that's how you solve it. But if you cannot adjust how hard that it shifts, and it decides on its own how hard it's going to shift based on memory or something, which is what it seems like. I'm still kind of developing my understanding on that. Then maybe it's not what you want at all if you're going to be unable to do that. And I mean, the problem with running a 6R80 with a Gen 3 Coyote and not a quick 6 is you need a standalone, like a Holly or Motec or something like that, or you need to put Gen 2 heads and a Gen 2 control pack on the motor, which you're not going to rip apart the brand new crate motor. So
Yeah, that and the key difference is direct injection, the Gen 3, right?
I'll tell you, I'm this close to buying a T56 and an RXT for it.
I mean, I like that choice. That's what I have in my street rod. It's got a Gen 1 Coyote, McLeod RXT Street Twin, and a T56 Magnum XL. It's a good choice. I will say on the strip, you know, if any of you guys watch my channel, there's quite a bit of historical footage of my silver coupe running, and some of it is shown with the TKO 600,
pattern,
Synchromesh TKO 600. What happens is when you're going down the strip, every time you declutch in order to shift, the car dives, right? And that's an opportunity for it to get sideways on you, as well as you waste your energy by unloading the suspension,
whole drivetrain,
and then it has to spend time and energy reloading the suspension in order to keep going. Plus, there is a shift delay, even if you're pretty quick operating it.
Yeah.
It's a way that I felt was just throwing our power away. So I went to Lenco in that car, and with the Lenco, you launch it on the clutch pedal, but then once you get rolling, you just keep your right foot down and you start jerking levers. And the Lenco is it's a stack of power glides, so it's a series of 2-speed planetary cases which have a underdrive and direct. So once you've pulled all the levers, you're in direct, and you have 1-to-1, and that's how you end up through the stripes. So that setup picked us up pretty close to a second. Yeah.
Combined with the clutch setup too.
I had the clutch before. I had the same McLeod soft lock slipper clutch when I ran the Synchromesh TKO. And I mean, a reason for this is it's a long style clutch. So instead of a diaphragm, it uses 3 fingers, right? And some of these diaphragm clutches will not release at high RPM. So you step on them, and I mean, it's still cable controlled, but whatever, even if it was rod controlled or whatever, you step on it, it just doesn't release. It doesn't let go. So with the long style clutch, it'll release easily at 10,000 RPM, probably higher. And I know there's guys who, they all said, the TKO it doesn't shift above 6,000 and stuff like this. Well, I mean, a lot of it was how they were actually shifting the transmission.
The main
but
thing
some
that
of it could have been
impacts those high RPM shifts is what type of clutches that you have in the synchros. So if you have better clutches in the synchros, it corrects the shaft speed to the next gear quicker. And if the clutch is still slipping, it's not going the same speed, so it won't go into gear.
Right. Yeah. If your automotive clutch, your main clutch, doesn't release properly when you step on it, that can be a problem. I mean, I will say a problem with the TKO is it's notchy. So if you're like me, made 2,000 T5 passes or something, you pretty quick learned with the T5 to give just a little side push when you punch it in a third, because you could put it in first. And if you did that, you're having a pretty bad day, right? You're at the top of second and you jam her into first. That's a engine failure. That's a disaster. So you learn a little side push. So you get a muscle memory from doing this, right? So I had a little muscle memory. And the first time or two I ran that TKO, I missed, right? I missed on third. And I sat here in the shop and I'm like, why am I missing? Because it had a really strong spring in the shifter. And if you pushed it out a second, it would line straight up to third. And it's because I was putting the side pressure. So I put a T-handle on it. I'm not a big fan of T-handles, but I put a T-handle on it to position my hand for a straight push. And then I never missed again. And with the long style clutch, I shifted the TKO combo at 8,600, and like it releases, so it shifts.
So on
every
that
time.
transmission, it had nothing to do with the clutches. Like guys will see that on like MT82s with Coyotes and high RPM shifts. So that's what I meant about the synchro clutches in there.
Yeah.
But one thing I've heard, I mean, it depends on what you want to do. If your idea is I want to go pick on C6 Z06s on the highway, well, if you have a T56 base transmission, then 60 to 130 is third gear, fourth gear, one shift. So you could be just as fast as any automatic car, 60 to 130, if that's the kind of trouble you like getting into.
Yeah. For the drag strip, it can be a problem with this business of loading and unloading.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a big question what to do about the transmission. And your ET isn't just your power; it's how efficiently you set it up. That includes your suspension setup, all of that kind of stuff. Cam doesn't need a lecture from me on suspension. He's probably a guy who could school me a little bit on suspension. He's very well researched on suspension. But everything has to work together, and the key is to try and make the car the most efficient that it can be. Like with my drag car, I know it's popular to do like a wheel stand, and it's a crowd pleaser. Here's what happens. If you lift the front wheels off the ground, as soon as you lift them off the ground at all, you're starting to waste your energy. And that energy you should organize it so that energy translates into forward motion, right? And by the way, if you come way off the ground, when they come back down, they smash stuff. like they break stuff. They
what
break
slows cars
suspension
down
parts.
too?
Yeah.
Surface area.
Right, you got the underside exposed. It's not like the Fox Body is the most aerodynamic car in the world anyway.
Yeah, well, I got to show them the blue flames while I'm hitting the 300 shot.
Yeah. So like my drag car, we worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And the way that car would work is it would lift the front wheels about 6 inches, and it would carry them 5 to 15 feet up track, and then set back down gently and go. So we really didn't waste our energy on rotation. It was enough that we had all the weight on the back, right? So we're getting
tuned with your clutch, tuned with the bias ply tires that would have been on it.
Right, your tire pressures. I ran a differential pressure because the car would always want to pull right. So you run a slightly higher pressure in the right tire to reduce the traction there, just ever so slightly to try and keep it straight. Half PSI on slicks would be typical.
Well, you just have to sit on the trans tunnel. Keeps it right in the middle. No, don't listen to me.
Maybe that's what I should do with this. Build it so you're sitting right in the middle. Yeah,
it'll be like what are those McLarens with the 3 seats, so you can have 2 supermodels beside you.
Oh.
One on either side. One babe on either side of my Fox Body.
Oh man!
You'll need a T-top Fox for that one, I think.
Oh yeah, the extra strong T-tops.
You're lucky if they don't pop out on the way down the strip, maybe.
Yeah.
I've never had one, so don't quote me.
Well, anyway, I don't know. We're 69 minutes in here. We're probably going to wrap this live up. But thanks for coming out. There's lots more content coming out on the channel. I've been working on a sort of SN95 buyer's guide, and I expect I'm going to have that finally released on Sunday, where I go over the history of those cars and what modifications work, and what they're worth and whether you should buy one or not. I don't know. My
depends on if it's a '93 GT Cobra or not.
That's not an SN95 car.
A Canadian Cobra.
Oh, a Canadian Cobra.
Yeah.
I do kind of smile because guys give me a hard time anytime I have like a car on the channel, or even like posted on Instagram or something, and it's got the Cobra stickers and stuff. That's correct for a Canadian car.
Yeah.
They're just a GT.
We're just a little special up here.
But
That's all.
Ford put that Cobra logo and stuff on there in order to maintain their copyright.
Right.
I don't know if you remember when Ford, there was a moment where Ford were just incredibly litigious, and I think the tipping point was when they tried to sue the Black Mustang Club for having pictures of their members' cars on a calendar that they sold, for the cost of the calendar to the club members or whatever. And somebody at Ford thought it would be a good idea to
Sue
to
the
sue
poor
these guys. And I think in those days, finally, Bill Clay Ford Jr. stepped in and said, "What are you doing?" Like, because anyone with a brain would say, "What are you doing?"
That's
But
almost as bad as the Eleanor thing.
yeah, except this is actually Ford doing
Yeah.
it. Well, anyway, there was a moment where our local CFL football team is the Calgary Stampeders, and the Calgary Stampeders logo is a running horse, and it's the opposite direction
Faces the other way,
from Ford. But you'll see guys like driving around here with a Chevy pickup with a running horse in the window, and your first thought is that guy a Mustang guy? Why is he driving a Chevy? But it's the Stampeders logo, right? And anyway, Ford were about to go after the Stampeders over the logo, and then they realized, I don't know when the Stampeders started, like 1930 or something like that. So the Stampeders have a way longer claim to that logo than Ford do. So if they'd have got into it with them, Ford would have ended up losing the Mustang logo.
It would be called the Ford Stampeder.
Yeah, and of course, you know what? Like the Stampeders put their logo on shirts and coffee mugs and sell them to people, just like Ford licenses that kind of stuff as well. So there is a direct overlap. And anyway, Ford finally had to back off. So
Except at Ford, you're just the Walmart version of the Stampeders. It's the Target version of the Stampeders.
the Target, yeah, okay. Anyway, stay tuned for more stuff on the channel. Maybe we'll get a little bit of Cam and his dad's Fairlane project on here as we go along. And one of these days, we got to get your car on here for a feature. I don't know why it doesn't work, but busy with one thing or another.
Too busy taking people's money in the darkness, No, too busy breaking stuff. That's what.
Thanks for coming out, and we'll see you next time. Oh, if I can get myself out of this chair.
Did you lose any followers yet?